This episode of Budget MTG Decks is sponsored by TCG Player, the best place to buy your cards in the US. Welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All the cards you see in our videos are $1 or less, with exception of the Commander cards. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when a new video comes out. Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. I'm David.
And I'm Berat, and today we're going to talk about a fun and effective Commander deck which we can build without breaking the bank. And today we have an awesome Aristocrats Commander in the form of Judith, the Scourge Diva. She costs 1, a black and a red, and she's a 2/2, a legendary creature human shaman, and she says other creatures you control get +1/+0, and whenever a non-token creature you control dies, she deals 1 damage to any target.
Yeah, so there's 2 important things to remember about this commander. One, she doesn't pump herself, so she's not a 3/2 at any given point in time. And secondly, she only triggers whenever a non-token creature dies. And we do have some ways of making tokens in the deck, so if we sacrifice those for value, we're not allowed to ping with our commander. So what is actually going to be the strategy of this deck? How we're going to be winning? Actually, it's kind of a control pinging deck. We're going to be removing our opponent's creatures. We're going to be keeping the board clear with our pinging, with our death touch stuff, with our instant speed removal, and when our opponents really don't have anything efficient to block with anymore, we're going to be whittling at them with small creatures which are less small than before because our commander of course pumps the power, and slowly killing them like that. So there's 3 things that this deck wants to do. It wants to sacrifice creatures for value and damage. It wants to give death touch to our pingers to function as targeted removal, and it wants to recur creatures from our graveyard in order to repeat the process over and over again. And it's actually a pretty affordable deck too, right?
You're right, David. Our commander itself costs around $5 itself, and the rest of the deck costs nearly $28. So we have a deck that costs less than $33 on its own. So now let's take a look at the deck list grouped by category.
The synergy cards are the cards that work really well in this deck. This is actually what the deck wants to do, which might be different from any other commander deck. So we divided the synergy cards into 3 categories. The sack outlets, these are the cards that allow us to sacrifice creatures for value. The sack targets, these are the creatures that we want to be sacrificing. And the payoff cards, these are the cards that like to see stuff dying around them. So the first of the sack outlets are Carrion Feeder and Falconwrath Aristocrat. Both of these cards are in there because they allow to sacrifice creatures, instant speed, and for free, as many as we want. Important to remember, Carrion Feeder gets absolutely huge but can't block, and Falconwrath Aristocrat is actually a pretty decent beater, being a 5/1 in the air when our commander is out. And of course, very nice to be able to make it indestructible so we can, survive board wipes and all that kind of stuff.
So the next sack outlets are Vampiric Rites, Lysolda the Blood Witch, Phyrexian Vault, and Talit Soothsayer. So all of them say pay 2 mana, sacrifice a creature, then draw a card. Lysolda, on the other hand, says whenever it's black, the creature you sacrifice is black, you draw a card, and whenever it's red, you deal 2 damage to any target.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Exactly what this deck wants to do.
Exactly.
Then we move on to the sack targets. These are the things that we want to be sacking. We've got Blood-Soaked Champion and Reassembling Skeleton. Both of these cards can be returned from our graveyard back to the battlefield for a measly 2 mana. But it's important to remember that Blood-Soaked Champion can only do this if we also attacked already this turn.
So the next sack targets are Brood of Cockroaches and Endless Cockroaches. They both say whenever they die, they return to our owner's hand.
Yeah, very handy to be able to replay that constantly. Very similar, actually, to Squee Goblin Nabob and Squee the Immortal. These guys also love to die because they just keep coming back to our hand, or we can just cast them back from our graveyard. Pretty sweet.
So the next payoff cards are Pawn of Ulamog and Sifter of Skulls. Both of them say whenever a non-token creature you control die, you get a Eldrazi spawn token.
Yeah, exactly. So one of them gives us the spawn, the other one gives us a scion.
Yeah.
Adds a difference of power, but in the end, the tokens, we just like to sacrifice them or use them for mana, which is pretty sweet. Then we move on to Skirgdag High Priest, Open the Graves, Zulaport Cutthroat, and Butcher of Malakir. They all do wildly different things, but they all love stuff dying around them. Skirgdag High Priest allows us to make 5/5 flying demons. Open the Graves gives us 2/2 zombies when stuff dies. Zulaport Cutthroat starts pinging people for damage and gaining us life, so we're draining them. And Butcher of Malakir is an absolute house, dealing 5 damage in the air and also making sure that if any of our stuff dies, including our tokens, everybody's going to have to also sacrifice a creature, so that is going to be absolutely brutal. That is it for the synergy cards. Let's have a look at the protection cards.
So we've divided our protection cards into two categories. One is against targeted removal and two is against board wipes. So we have here Dark Privilege, Mask of Avacyn and Whispers of Cloak. Dark Privilege says sacrifice a creature, regenerate target creature, so that's against target removal and it's a sack outlet. Mask of Avacyn pumps us creature up and gives us hexproof. Whispers of Cloak says it can't be blocked and has Shroud.
Yeah, I really love Dark Privilege. It does so much work in this deck. As we said already, we want a sack outlet. It does that. People will say, oh, targeted destroy effects, regenerate, we sack a creature, we love it, we ping a point of damage. If it's got death touch, even better. And finally, people say, oh, board wipe. And you're like, bam, okay, my stuff's going to die anyway. I sack it to give my creature all this regenerate shield as well. So that is just absolutely brutal. Then we move on to the cards that protect us against board wipes. So we got Spoils of Blood and No Rest for the Wicked. Spoils of Blood for just keeping one black mana open. You can always do this. You're going to get a huge creature because it counts all the creatures on the battlefield. You can have a monster at the end of when people wipe the board, or if you wipe the board, that's going to be beating for tons of damage. And No Risk for the Wicked. When we sacrifice it, we can get all the creatures back that died this turn. We can just replay them again. We got a lot of cheap creatures, so it's definitely never a problem. That is it for the protection cards. Let's have a look at the control cards.
We divided our control cards into three categories: creature removal, non-creature removal and board wipes. So we have here Tragic Slip, Terminate and Unlicensed Disintegration. They all deal with our opponent's creatures at instant speed at a very low cost.
Yeah, they're super, super sweet. They saved my butt a bunch of times. Then we have Bone Shredder and Shriekmaw. These guys come in and they allow us to destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. What's great is that these are creatures that also have, in this case, Echo cost and Evoke cost, which means that they're also going to die. They're going to kill themselves at some point, which is really nice because that means that our command is going to trigger off them.
And the next cards are Flashback Power and Play Crafter. Whenever they enter the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature, so we're going to sacrifice themselves, of course, so it triggers our commander's ability.
Yeah, very nice. Then we move on to Gorgon's Head, Horobi, Death's Wail, Death, Pits of Wrath, and Archetype of Finality. And all these cards either give our creatures or stuff around us Death Touch or Pseudo Death Touch. Horobi and Death Pits of Wrath, giving it to pretty much everybody on the board, but it doesn't matter, we got small stuff anyway, so it would die to anything that's big, but all our stuff is going to be killing our opponent's things, especially our pingers, which of course our commander is one of them, so that is going to be really handy when we're controlling the board.
Yeah. So the next cards are Cunning Spark Mage, Full Shock Sorcerer and Deathbringer Totkar. So Cunning Spark Mage and Full Shock Sorcerer, they come at haste. So with Death Touch, they can just ping instant of our opponent's creatures to death. And Deathbringer Totkar, this guy is a powerhouse. Whenever given Death Touch, he can just wipe boards on its own. Yeah,
exactly. It's also important to remember that even if they don't have Death Touch or one of the pseudo Death Touch things, there's still lots of 1/1 or 1 toughness utility creatures out there. So they're always doing work anyway. Then we move on to the non-creature spells. We've got Byforce, Goblin Crater Maker, and Rakdos Charm. All of these cards allow us to deal with our opponent's artifacts. Goblin Crater Maker can also in a pinch be used as a pinger, and Rakdos Charm can also in a pinch be used as Graveyard Hate or dealing a lot of damage to people who like to play tokens, for example.
So next up we have Board Wipe, Chain Reaction, Hour of Devastation, and Crux of Fate. Chain Reaction, yeah, that can wipe boards if it has 5 or 6 or 7 creatures. It deals so much damage to every creature on the battlefield. Hour of Devastation makes creatures lose indestructibility and hit planewalkers. And Crux of Fate, that hits all creatures, all non-drunk creatures, whatever you like.
Exactly. That is it for the control cards. Let's have a look at the card advantage cards.
We've divided our card advantage into two categories. Those that draw us card and those that recur us cards from the graveyard. So we have here Argus Bloodfast at Underworld Connections. Argus Bloodfast says pay 2 mana and 2 life to draw a card. And Underworld Connections says tap this enchanted land to pay 1 life and draw a card. you can do that just one time a turn, whereas Argus Bloodfest, you can do it multiple times if you have the mana.
Exactly. And then we have two powerhouses in this deck. We've got Grim Horspex and Harvester of Souls. Every time a non-token creature dies, we're going to be drawing a card. Grim Horspex only does it for our creatures, but Harvester of Souls, very indiscriminate, really doesn't care. It draws us cards for also our opponent's creatures, and as well it's a 5/5 death touch. So it's just beautiful. It's beautiful.
Next up, Costly Plunder and Altar's Reap. It has at an instant you can just sacrifice creature you control and draw 2 cards. So if someone targets our creature, we just
sacrifice
it and draw 2 cards.
Yeah, so it's pretty nice in both ways that not only does it give us card advantage, it doesn't matter because we got stuff that comes back anyway.
Yeah.
And it can kind of be used also has protection from exile effects. You know, they're very versatile, these cards actually. And then we come to the Granddaddy Blood Gift Demon. This thing is a 5/4 flyer in the area. We give it a little bit of extra attention up here because it just, you know, this thing has gone to the gym.
Yeah.
It's got the pecs, it's got the biceps. This thing draws cards, it flies, it does your taxes, it does everything that you want it to do.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love it in this deck. Great card advantage and a personal friend, if I may say so.
So for the recursion, we have Cadaver Imp, Gravedigger, and Puppeteer Clique. Where Cadaver Imp and Gravedigger do the same. They enter the battlefield and they get a creature card from the graveyard to our hand. Where Puppeteer Clique is a bit different. He enters the battlefield, then gets a creature from from opponent's graveyard and gives it haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step, but it has persist, so it can do all the shenanigans over again when it dies.
Yeah, and beauty of this card, of course, is that when we do get that creature from our opponent's graveyard, we don't have to wait till it gets exiled. We can sack it to one of our sack outlets to get value from it. And then if people don't want to kill our Puppeteer Clique, we can just kill it with our other sack outlets and then have it trigger again. And then we're going to do it gets so much value in this deck. It's beautiful.
Insane.
Then we have the last of the recursion cards, and that is Palace Siege, Charmbreaker Devils, and Fell Shepherd. Palace Siege has 2 functions, but we're just going to be using it in the cons function in this deck. Every turn, the beginning of our turn, upkeep, we're going to be getting a creature from our graveyard back to our hand. Charmbreaker Devils does the same thing, but now for instant sorceries, getting our target instant speed removal, getting those draw cards back, and getting the board wipes back as well. It's kind of a nice beater, but mostly just for the recursion in there. And then lastly, Fell Shepherd. It is an 8/6 avatar. This thing is insane. If you're able to make it unblockable, then this thing deals tons of damage. And the great thing about it is that if we sack all our stuff, we swing in with this thing and we're able to connect, then we're going to return all the creatures that died this turn back to our hand so we can replay them. And if we don't have a sack outlet, doesn't matter, because Fell Shepherd, also part-time in the weekends, is a sack outlet. For 1 black, we're going to sacrifice another creature and give another creature -2/-2, which is pretty nice actually as a removal, sack outlet, beater, recursion. This thing does it all. That is it for the card advantage cards. Let's have a look at the ramp cards.
Since we don't play green, we have only one way to ramp, and that's by artifacts. We have here Ragdoll Signet, Prismatic Lens, a Star Compass, and Mindstone. They are all mana rocks that cost 2, and they just make mana.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have Palladium Mare and Unstable Obelisk. Both of these cost 3. Palladium Mare gives us actually 2 mana when it taps. It's important to remember that it does have Summoning Sickness, so we can't use it on the turn it comes in. But not only is it just gives us quite a bit of mana for its cost, but we can also just sack it if we want to because it's a creature. And we have Unstable Obelisk, which taps for a colorless mana, but you know, if we're in a pickle, if somebody's got an enchantment, which we just can't deal with, actually we can, because we can pay 7 mana, tap it, and destroy target permanent, so that we can deal with enchantments that way. That is it for the ramp. Let's have a look at the lands. We divide the lands into 12 swamps, 11 mountains, and 14 non-basic lands. For the non-basics, we're going to start off with Rakdos Guildgate, Cinder Barrens, Tressorhorn Sinks, Urborg Volcano, Akrum Refuge, Bloodfell Caves, and Rakdos Carnarium. All these cards are kind of the same. They're going to be tapping for red or black, with the exception of Rakdos Carnarium, which taps for both, but we do need to bounce a land when we play it.
Next up we have Grixis Panorama, Junt Panorama, Evolving Wilds, and Terramorphic Expanse, which we can just tap, sacrifice it, and search for a swamp or a mountain.
Yeah. Then we have Haunted Fengraf, Rogue's Passage, and Detection Tower. These are all kind of utility lands. Haunted Fendergrass allows us to return a creature at random from a graveyard to our hand. Rogue's Passage makes one of our big fat creatures unblockable, and Detection Tower allows us to get rid of that pesky hexproof when we're trying to ping people to death, and then we can make sure that they can't protect themselves with that anymore. So that is it for the lands. Let's have a look at some example starting hands. Here we have two examples of ideal starting hands. Both examples have 3 lands, a mana rock, a sack outlet, a creature that likes to be sacked, and in the top example we've got a card that likes it when stuff dies, and in the bottom example we've got a card that makes it easier to kill stuff through Death Touch in this example. Now let's have a look at the non-budget upgrades.
Here are a few cards you can take out of the deck to replace with the following non-budget upgrades.
That is it for our show. Thank you very much for watching. I'm David.
And I'm Berat.
And this was Budget MTG Decks. Find all the cards discussed in this video in the description below. Also, show you're a fan of the channel by rocking this awesome Budget MTG Decks merchandise. This show was made possible by the support of our loyal patrons. Head on over to patreon.com/budgetmtgdecks and donate as little as $1 per month.